All right, let's look at um, Fox News freaking out. It looks like my OBS is not working. So this is a few days before the election actually took place, and they're crying that Abdul al-Sayed is going to lose because he was palling around with Hasan Piker. Thank God OBS reconnected. Woo! And they're saying he's facing criticism. The ironic part is they're the ones criticizing. So they basically make the news and then they re-report the news. Kind of important piece to keep in mind. This is going to be Haley Stevens, his opponent, obviously talking about that.
Hey, Congresswoman Stevens. Yeah. Your opponent, Abdul al-Sayed, was joined by Hasan Piker at his election eve rally last night in Detroit. Regardless of who is victorious tonight, do you think it's plausible, with only 3 months before the general election, that both wings of the Democratic Party can unite behind a candidate?
Well, look, I've got the wings of the Michigan Democratic Party that I'm going to be focused on. I don't believe Mr. Piker lives here in our state. I do think his rhetoric should be denounced. I do think that my opponent should distance himself from him. I don't know what they were doing last night at this pool party that was going.
So one thing that I think is interesting is they never talk about which rhetoric. You know, they'll bring up like a 9-year-old quote or something about him saying we deserve 9/11, which is the same as blowback for the events leading up to 9/11 in the Middle East. But that's a whole other story. That's a whole other can of worms where you're talking about the terrorist groups that we in the U.S. funded that later then came back to fund the people who did 9/11 with the things they needed to do it, that kind of thing. So like in that regard, we literally gave them the means to. But otherwise, what are you talking about? Are you talking about affordability, about Michiganders getting the ability to be like more sustainable on their energy because they're not linked up with like gas and big energy, and they're not being bought off by DTE so they can explore more energy options, that they're not going to have AI data centers that nobody wants in their backyard eating up all their water and power and forcing the public's electric bill higher to pay for the corporation's profits, or that they're going to have somebody who's going to stand up and say, I'm not going to pay for this infinite war that Israel started in the Middle East that we should have nothing to do with, and we're getting dragged in, and we have American soldiers getting killed. We're bombing children's schools, killing hundreds of little school children, and we're wasting billions of American tax dollars that we could otherwise spend to make our own infrastructure. You wonder why your bridge is falling down? It's because we sent a bomb to Israel. You wonder why we can't build a new school? It's because we sent another bomb to Israel. And if you look at the stats in the campaign, they play out exactly like that. She took $60 million from AIPAC. She's got another $10 million, some of that coming from DTE and other energy people. When they pay that much, they're paying for something. They're not throwing money down the drain. So you got to ask yourself, which votes of Haley Stevens are they paying for? Versus Abdul al-Sayed, the only campaign PAC he took from was one that his dad is a part of, or something like that, and it's a much less substantial amount than the 60 million. I think she outspent him like 3-1, and that's a huge crutch, and that's a weakness that never gets talked about. She talks about him being not electable because he talks with Hasan. Hasan drove a base of young voters to call, phone bank, not door knock, text, everything to help get the word out in a way that built a ground game that outwon voters compared to the, again, $70 million that she raised over him. And I think his was like 10 mil or something like that. But actually, we can just look on Open Secret and find this here. Open Secrets. Michigan Senate race. In Senate 2026. Stevens here. Where is his PAC raising? Yeah. So he raised 66 million or 66,000 from PACs. And then you look at his individual donors and stuff like that. That's where all of his money was raised from. And then you go back and you look at Haley Stevens. So he did outraise her here. I believe she outspent him. And there's also PAC money that's not being shown in this, but she got 1.5 million from PAC. So if you're talking about just PAC money, the amount she's getting from that is insane. Organizations, AIPAC, #1 donor. Every time, dude. You look at Abdul Al-Sayed. Beginning here, Abdul Al-Sayed. Organizations, #1 donor. Some health company for like less than 100,000 versus AIPAC that's spending millions and millions. And that's not even including any dark money that would have come into this, which, given how many TV ads, we can assume is a lot in this rate. So he's got, what, 2.5 mil in the bank. She's got 2.5 mil cash on hand. He outraised her in much more dependable ways because Mike Rogers, #1 donor, this, another name for AIPAC here. I think that's also an AIPAC subsidiary, but I have to look it up. Is the Blackstone Group in here? AT&T. I'm surprised DT&E aren't. I mean, he didn't fundraise much, given that he didn't need to because there was no contest on his race. But in here, there should be DT&E. Energy, Pinnacle. But regardless, some of his biggest donors were also AIPAC. And as we were looking at under organizations, AIPAC by any other name smells as shit. And so why would they fund both campaigns? If they think both people are going to be pro-Israel, why would they pump more money into Haley Stevens' campaign when they think that either person is going to serve their needs? It would just be wasting money for them. So they wouldn't throw that kind of bad money after good in their mind, and she would be left out with no support network, which is what Abdul has with all the young voters that are out helping him, and no cash on hand. The idea that he's a weaker candidate is just wrong.
Going on, but I was with Congresswoman Hillary Scholten and Debbie Stabenow, and some of this stuff makes people uncomfortable. Frankly, it makes me uncomfortable. We don't need these demagogues or people citing allegiance to Mao coming into Michigan. Come and walk.
Citing allegiance to Mao coming into Michigan. This is a guy he campaigned with a little bit, but it's not like he said that I love everything Hasan has ever said. And secondly, this is a person who said Israel comes to me in my dreams and that they'll do everything to support Israel. What are you doing for Michiganders, dude? What are you doing for your own state? Not Israel, not some foreign nation. Why are they a higher priority to you than your own constituents? That's insane.
Walk in a small business. Seriously, come walk a manufacturing shop floor. There's a grocery.
By the way, he produced that. He showed how many events he went to where they had open public forums. It was like 450 during the election. She didn't produce how many they went to, but I can guarantee you it was less than 450. So the idea that he hasn't walked the streets more and talked to the people of Michigan more is just such a lie, dude.
Manufacturer, that I've gotten to know. I've spent a lot of time with them. Their healthcare costs are $500,000 right now. You don't see Mike Rogers there, and respectfully, I don't see my Democratic opponent. So maybe instead of being with Mr. Piker, if he ends up winning.
Maybe instead of spending all of our money sending bombs over to Israel, we should be spending it on our own Medicare. And he's talked about Medicare for all and resolving the medical debt crisis. It's something that progressives are a lot more committed to, whereas liberals and centrists will only kind of vaguely gesture at it because they know it's popular, but they won't actually fix it because they've had years to fix it. She's had years to fix it and hasn't done shit about it. So
in the nomination, maybe he'll come with me and hear from some of the small businesses who don't want this extreme politics coming into our state.
But yeah, obviously that's a Fox News clip, and you'll see that a lot. Like, they almost never clip progressives unless they're saying, look at this crazy thing they said, and then they'll clip it, and it's like the crazy thing is, I want you to be able to afford your groceries. But they'll clip centrists all the time because centrists are the ones going and saying, progressives are terrible, they're ruining this country, da 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 da. They're the ones making the animosity, and then they pretend like it's bad that when a progressive wins. Well, guess what? Vote blue no matter who should cut both ways. Time to vote blue no matter who. Because Abdul Al-Sayed already won, and Haley Stevens has said that she will endorse him. I haven't actually seen that endorsement yet come through, but time to put your money where your mouth is. We'll look at that a little bit later.
On Marxist commie Mamdani booed off stage in New York City? Wow. Take a look at this. I guess it turns out not everyone in New York.
Kind of looks like he stayed on stage. I wouldn't say it's booing off stage.
Not everyone in the Democratic Party is.
It's also interesting to note that if you look at his popularity, let's look at a YouGov poll. Don't accept cookies. I want to see it over time. Nope. Politico. Um, 48% approval. That was in early April. 43% approval. 43% approval to 27% disapproval. Because the other thing to note is this disapproval is surprisingly low, given the lower approval rating. And then on his handling of the winter storm, 65%, childcare 45% or 54%, housing 49%, and then the housing, given that there's a disparity, it's not a straight 49% disapproval, 51% approval. There's people in the middle who said, I'm not sure, that kind of thing. So this 49% would be stronger than the disapproval. I can almost guarantee it, because there's going to be at least 2% that are going to say, I'm unsure on that issue. Versus late June, it's jumped up even more, 58% approval rating. So it's only been getting stronger as he fills in more potholes, as he handles more winter storms and helps the people of New York. When you put a populist in, they do work, it turns out. And as they're doing that work, they get more popular. And that's what establishments are so petrified of, is they see if you let them in office and they get what they want, they can do good and show people that the government can do good work. And when you do that, people start asking why they haven't. And it starts making some real awkward questions for the people that are in power right now. You know, you look at Eric Adams, who left a budget deficit. He fixed that within like the first 3 weeks of being in office. He gave public presentations on, here's where our budget is. Here's why we're in the mess that we're in right now. Here's what the previous administration left me with. And then he showed how they fixed it. And through the whole process, it was very transparent. It got the budget back on track, and they're doing the things to help the people in New York, like fixing the potholes and the roads. And they're even opening the first government-run grocery store, which is going to take the prices at the regular grocery stores, cut them by 30%, and allow people to buy groceries at a reasonable rate. So they're helping fight inflation in that way too. Just showing that good things are possible if you fight for them, but you have to fight for them. That means getting out, because like we talked about in the previous segment, getting progressives elected, it takes a lot of manpower, because they're not going to get the money from corporations. So instead they need people out there phone banking, walking, calling, texting, everything to help them out. I would just give another pitch for like Abdul during the primary. He won the midterm, but that ain't the end of the game. We got to get him over the finish line. I know I'm going to be out there. I'm going to do some phone banking for him. I'm going to do some, I can't do door knocking because I'm not flying that far, but, I'll do everything I can to help get him over the finish line as well. And if you like those causes, if you like people being able to afford where they live, being able to get to places, have third places where they can enjoy, like parks, workout areas, movie theaters, things like that, then push for progressives. They're going to help with building those places up rather than Democrats and Republicans who only care about helping corporations cut their taxes so that their bottom line goes up next year and we all pay the price for it. With all that being said, let's finish this segment
about
here.
Their new socialist rulers and communist rulers. Take a look at this headline. New York Times.
They don't even know the difference between socialism and communism. So when they say that, they're interchangeable words whenever you hear it from Fox, because they're not distinguishing. They've taught their audience to not distinguish between socialism and communism anyway.
The war started in 2019. They might have missed it. The Washington Post even prepping voters for the very real possibility that a blue midterm wave is not coming. And tonight, after a series of big primaries.
Considering the disapproval rating of the Senate, the House, and the executive under Republican rule, and the historical change that after most presidential elections and a big flip like this, you see it flip back the other way because the other party is more energized to get out and vote. This is just cope, dude. And he knows that. He's seen enough elections to know that he's just coping right here. He's trying to change the narrative, but you can't change reality, it turns out.
Wins for dozens of bizarre, radical, socialist, communist candidates. The traditional base of the Democratic Party, they're not too happy either. Take a look.
What's in this corridor? Well, there are a lot of working class voters and a lot of African American voters. Abdul Assayed did very poorly amongst these groups in the primary. It's going to be very interesting to see whether or not.
And I wonder if you looked at a blanket of where the TV ads and the money spends for Stevens were, if they wouldn't just directly coincide with that pocket of Michigan. By the way, when they're talking about this, they're talking about like 10 point difference, 45 to 55. And they're not going to show Grand Rapids or Ann Arbor where he won by like 20 points. But they will show this area, which to be fair is around Detroit, where I think he needs to do more work before the general. But we're also talking about urban centers where they're going to vote blue compared to Republicans. Like, this is a function of it being a city. And if you look at the primaries, way more people voted in the Democratic primary than the Republican primary. Now, part of that was because they only had one Republican, but it shows good for how much turnout they're going to get in the general compared to Republicans.
He can bring them into the tent come the general election, bring those swing voters with them, because where Abdul Assayed did well, to be honest with you,
they are going to show
college towns. That's where he really ran.
Not just college towns, dude.
Now this Democratic.
They cut it there. They cut it. Are you kidding me? You cut it there. That's wild, dude. They don't show Grand Rapids. They don't show the northern part of Michigan. You'd think the guy won most of the state. So there's going to be a couple of parts where he didn't win, right? And then there's going to be more parts where he did win because he got more of the overall vote. But they can't show that. They can't show why he's popular. They just have to say it's a bunch of dumb college kids with mail-in ballots and stuff. By the way, there's a bunch of people other than the college kids in that town as well. But that's just going to get completely overlooked. Because it's overlooked intentionally. I don't know what to tell you on that one. Like, pretty obvious. Oh, shoot. It's skipping around now.
Revealing his true beliefs. Take a look. Do you want amnesty for illegals and to abolish borders?
What are illegals?
By the way, amnesty for these people is a belief held by Ronald Reagan. So, like, logistically, it's the correct thing to believe. If you look at immigrants coming into the U.S., if you grant them amnesty, they can pay more into taxes. They can pay Social Security. They can pay into like the medical system and things like that. Even right now, some people who are illegal still get a tax ID number and pay into those. But you could instead, when people don't have to fear that they're going to get deported, get everybody into the tax system and have them all paying their way and have them all have worker protections that they didn't have before.
Illegal immigrants, people that didn't respect our laws, borders, and sovereignty, entered the country without permission. Illegally.
I don't accept the premise of that question.
Do you want to abolish?
That's it, dude. If you're gonna go on Fox, you can't be that weak though. You got to be more aggressive with it. Obviously, the framing is shit, and you can point that out, but point it out in a way where you're gonna show why it's good to have immigrants. They have a good effect on the GDP. If you like having money in your pocket, if you like having a strong economy that's growing, which helps all Americans, you want immigrants. They do nothing but a net benefit in the US economy. They hurt one class of people, and that is people without a college degree who are working the minimum wage jobs. And overall, they help those people in the long run. That's only a temporary suppression of the economic power of those people. Over the course of 10 years, it's actually an economic boon. And you're like, how does that work? It's because they raise the overall GDP of the entire United States. They raise the productivity of the US, and they contribute in a way that allows for higher paying jobs for everyone, because we keep inflating the economy rather than seeing like deflation. When you start seeing deflation in a lot of countries, it leads to a lot of wonky financials given the current capitalist system, which obviously is a lot of horse shit from the beginning. But if you like strip that away and you say this is the system we're working in, it's still better to have immigrants coming into the country filling those jobs. When you don't have immigrants filling those jobs, by the way, they fill most construction jobs. You want those new homes built? Keep immigrant construction workers working. You saw this in Florida. They cracked down on it, and then all of a sudden they were showing videos of all these build sites, these large construction projects that were just not getting built. You were seeing crops go bad in the fields because they didn't have people to pick the crops and stuff. It's not great, but it's also not work that Americans are picking up. Like, legal Americans just aren't going out and doing that work. Like, they're lazy, dude. I don't know what to tell you. Like, they're not taking it. And so if you're going to have work that's not going to be done, or you could have that work be done, I'd rather have it be done, have those people paying taxes, and have those people have worker protections. And you do that by giving them amnesty from coming into this country. What's their crime? Their crime is a misdemeanor crossing the border. And your punishment for them having a misdemeanor crossing the border and helping us is to kick them out, take them away from their families if their families are still here, or send them back potentially into a bad situation because a lot of them are coming over seeking asylum, which would make it illegal for us to kick them out without processing them. And you also want to kick them out with no due process that everyone in the U.S. is owed, not just U.S. citizens, because you can't determine if they're U.S. citizens until you have a legal process to make that determination. I don't carry around my papers on a daily basis. I don't want to live in a society where we have to carry around our papers on a daily basis. That's insane. You're talking about Germany in 1939.
Abolish ICE?
Absolutely.
Sorry,
You
not
want to
39.
defund the Department of War?
41.
We need to radically reduce how much money we're spending with the Pentagon. Absolutely.
Would you like to?
Yeah. How is that a crazy answer? The Pentagon, who hasn't passed an audit in like 19 years, we need to reduce spending on them because they've gained budget year over year over year more than any other thing. I think they're the highest paid thing in the US, unless you consolidate all of the social programs into one big lump. The Pentagon spends the most in the US, and they ain't spending it on soldiers' wages. I've talked to soldiers, dude. Their wages ain't that high. They're spending it on military contracts to build these missiles that are bloated, that are like $50 million per missile, $100 million per missile. And then you look at the cost of the actual things to make it, and they just don't match up. And then they have to do R&D where they make a new Tomahawk missile that goes 5 feet further. And for that R&D, they need, $1 billion so that they can have guys piddle around for a bit. It's all to serve profit margins of military industrial complex companies and not the US person. And yet it's insane for him to say, hey, this thing where we're wasting a ton of money that we could be spending on schools, roads, infrastructure, let's stop wasting money. Let's stop throwing money in a pit and instead spend it on our people. And he thinks he's highlighting that as a radical belief.
To eliminate cash bail and establish a wealth tax.
Eliminate cash bail. Yeah, bail that's been used to lock up a bunch of poor people, because you can charge somebody, lock them up, put them on bail before you've even made charges against them substantiated your charges against them. Whereas wealthy people are just going to throw a couple million at the problem and get out of jail. So it's literally just a way to keep poor people in jail when you wouldn't for the rich, which is part of our two-tier justice system here.
Absolutely.
Would you like to abolish prisons and abolish the police?
99% of what police do are not going after the bad guys.
It's funny that they cut it in this way. You should always be skeptical when they're the news source, and instead of directly showing when he starts answering the question, they skip into halfway through his answer. Makes you wonder what they're cutting out. It might be the more reasonable part in the prefaces where he puts conditions on what he's saying, and they cut it out to make him seem more unreasonable.
Now, yet another
percent of what police do are not going after the bad guys.
And then they mute him. Are you insane, dude? This is... Cattle believe this. People don't believe this, dude. Cattle believe this. That's a crazy way to cut it, dude. It's... The fact that they muted him and showed him still talking is so dishonest, man. You didn't even clip a full sentence. You clipped like the middle of a sentence, man. Oh my God, what a joke.
No,
we don't need to see the rest of it, dude. What a fucking joke. Oh, I think I'm not going to get anything new from CNN. They're not saying anything novel, so we can probably end the clip there. If you have been watching, thank you so much. I always appreciate the support. Every view helps. I don't take any money from anybody, really. I'll maybe take some money from YouTube if I get some ad revenue going, but that's a long ways off. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. If you've made it this far, please drop a like, drop a comment, drop a subscribe. I'd love to keep making this content, but I definitely need some positive feedback to keep the ball rolling and have a reason to do it. And yeah, I just appreciate you for sticking around. Thank you so much. You have a good night.